Okay, so today I'm joined by Darcy Logan. It's going to be a two-parter because we're going to take one part and talk about your art and what you're doing, what you've done, who you are, what the meaning of life is,
Yeah.
all of those.
The answer is art.
Art. Art is the meaning of life. It's supposed to say 42.
Oh,
Right?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're joined with Darcy. And then the second part, we're going to talk about CASA, which you are the curator and gallery services, I think it's
Gallery
called.
services manager and curator, yes.
Yeah. So then we'll talk about that and learn a bit about our community art center
Sure.
and what's going on there. So just to get a bit of background on you,
Okay.
where were you born? And did you know you were always going to be an artist?
I was born in Grand Prairie, Alberta.
Yeah?
Grew up most of my life in the central interior of BC in Prince George.
Yeah?
And I drew when I was like a child,
Yeah.
but I kind of gave it up through my teenage years. I was more interested in literature and writing. So I wrote poetry, short stories.
So still an artist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess a literary artist.
Yeah.
And I actually pursued a literature degree in a post-secondary level. Dropped out in my final year, so didn't get my certification. I thought I'd rather go explore the world of partying and drugs. Well,
Okay, I
it
was
would be a lot more interesting.
I did the exact same thing, but I didn't. But I went through and was doing my English degree, and I thought, well, I'll do my English degree, and then I'll teach.
Mhm.
And then I realized I didn't like kids that much, so decided, and then so I was just going to finish up my English degree. And then I took a art course, and it was like, here are me people, I must go.
Yeah.
And same thing, left it, and it was like, well, no, but I have to do it now.
Visual arts hadn't even crossed my mind until I was in my early 20s. And I was kind of in that indeterminate limbo state of like your early 20s.
Yeah.
And I was still interested in literature, and there was a documentary coming on William Blake,
Oh.
who I'd always liked as a poet.
Poet, yeah.
His literary output, and I'm like, I'm going to watch this, but it was about his drawing and painting.
Oh,
And
I didn't even know he drew and painted.
Amazing illuminated manuscripts, and a
Oh.
watercolorist and a gouache painter. And I saw this, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this.
Right.
So I went out the next day to I didn't know where to start. Went to the dollar store, grabbed some dollar store paints and some poster board, and
Yeah.
started doing it and never looked back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, William Blake.
Interesting fellow.
Yeah. So then you knew you wanted to start art, and you're in your late teens?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
So what did you do then? Did you go to...
I tried. I was living with my uncle at that point, and he let me set up a studio in his basement.
Oh,
so I was
cool.
just self-taught and doing it, getting books out, reading magazines,
Yeah.
and I'm just not
Just
developing.
passionate about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted some real skill sets. Like I couldn't.
Yeah.
There was a point I couldn't push past.
Right.
And I thought, well, I need to go to post-secondary and learn these skills,
Yeah.
which you never end up really learning. You have to still
You
teach
learn
yourself.
a lot of other stuff, but you're right.
Yeah, you learn how to think, but not necessarily.
Exactly.
I wanted the magic formula that could
Yeah.
teach me how to paint.
Yeah,
And
that's
that-
exactly what I thought too, that you would go and you'd get these skills, and like you say, really you get to learn how to critically think.
Right.
And
And
yeah.
evaluate your own work and decide what interests you. And it's funny if you look back even to the idea that you go to school to be an artist is a fairly recent conceit.
Yeah.
Historically, like if you were Monet or Pissarro, you bought your paints and you went out and painted, and through the process you learned how to do it.
Oh, okay.
Like you'd maybe go to these informal academies and sit down with your friends, but it wasn't institutional in the same way we understand it. That's actually really recent.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah. I'm going on a tangent.
No, that's okay. It's cool to know that, because I mean, when we think about literature and philosophy and all of those that are ancient and have been studied, right, well known, that it's kind of surprising that art itself hasn't been taught as much as I thought maybe it would have.
Yeah, there was a time when it was like in a guild structure, so you would become an
Right.
apprentice and learn that way, but modern art as we understand it, yeah, I'd say probably the 50s. Was
Do
when
you
it
think
really
they
took off.
had like formulas for all of like when you were mixing the egg paints and like stuff like that? Like,
Back in the day?
yeah.
Yeah, and I
when
think
you were
they were-
using mercury.
Oh yeah, closely guarded secrets, right? Like,
Yeah.
you had to learn your guild handshakes to show that you actually knew how to mix your Viridian green or whatever.
Yeah. I can't imagine. We're so lucky now, really.
Yeah, it's
Pour out of a tube.
democratized, but also some sort of commodity fetishism where I don't even know where my paint comes from, how it's made,
I know.
anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I met you at the University of Lethbridge. I think
right.
you were just like on your way out when I was coming in or close to that, right?
Yes.
Because I remember thinking you were like the art star. You guys,
Oh.
you're that little group. It was like, wow.
Well, and I remember too, you were and I see one of them up there. You were
Oh.
doing collagraphs of women's unmentionables.
Yes. I was.
Like corsets and stuff. and
Yeah, yeah,
inking
some
them up.
nylons and stuff like that
Yeah.
too. But that's when you were doing. I remember actually when we did critique or whatever, and yours were of, or a lot of them were not. Oh my goodness, where there was the big war. Not Gandhi. That's the only name that's coming to
Oh,
me.
the invasion of Afghanistan?
Yeah. No. Wasn't there one about, the hotel? It's in Africa. It's a country. Okay, never mind.
No, you're right. I did a whole lot of architecture.
Yeah, but it was also about what had gone on.
Oh, yes. I was at that point, I was interested in architecture that's built for a specific purpose that gets inverted. So schools that turn into detention camps.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Churches that turn into places where there's massacres.
Yes.
Red Cross, all these things. Yeah. So it would
Yeah.
be probably one of those. That was in my last year.
Yeah. So while I was doing the lingerie and I look at that, I was like, oh, his has all kinds of meaning behind it. It's so political.
Yeah,
Of course,
but yours had also a social currency,
that's-
right?
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah. And it was
And I would look at the
political,
same way
too.
and be like, oh, I'm just doing this moody stuff. And she's doing stuff that has some social content and currency.
Oh, well, that's cool to hear.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. But when you left, because you stayed in Lethbridge when you were done university, right? You've stayed here. Yeah.
I could never achieve the financial escape velocity with my student loans to get out. And also, I grew to really love Lethbridge.
Yeah.
I really
yeah.
like it here.
We're really lucky because it's quite the arty city,
Yeah.
especially for the size that we are.
I remember
And-
reading in a Canadian art magazine article, maybe around 2011,
Yeah.
and they didn't say it facetiously or glibly, but they're like, Lethbridge has more artists per capita than probably any other city in Canada.
Oh, really?
And I kind of believe it. Like,
yeah.
think about we have CASA, the Southern Alberta Art Gallery, Trianon, the Penny Building,
Yeah.
little cafes that are showing art,
Yeah.
and that's just the visual
And then,
side.
of course, our university.
The University
Yeah.
Gallery,
Yeah.
and there's all sorts of performance venues, so there's so many artists here.
Yeah. And there's a couple of collectives. I can't think of any of them right now, but there's a couple of collectives that are doing neat little things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And have been many that have flared up and kind of snuffed out over time too. So it's a really fertile place to be an artist.
Well, and I think one of the nice things about it is everyone's encouraging to each other, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever felt or came across something that I felt like I wasn't welcome within that. So I think we're pretty good at that, of trying to encourage our up and comings.
I think so, and I think our small size helps that.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you were at? Okay, I know you're at CASA now, but before that, you were at. All of a sudden, I can't think of the name.
The Bowman Art Center.
Bowman Art Center. Boy, I'm having a day today. I can't think of any
That's
names
all right.
or what anything.
It's Friday.
That's right. It is. But yeah, and how did you get started there? Just kind of, because the Bowman was a great little tiny not tiny, but small art space that contained so many different things, right? Guilds and classes and
Yep. Community gallery space, rentable space. It was basically CASA on a small scale.
right.
So when they built CASA, it was built to kind of take its place, like
Right.
with room to grow. But as soon as we moved in there, we were already at capacity
Yeah.
because we'd been asking for CASA for 20 years.
I can't believe we got it, and so happy that we have it.
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
We had, at that point, we had the luxury of a really visionary city council, and I don't think we've had one since, and CASA wouldn't have been built now. Not a chance.
Yeah. Which is probably what's happening with our
Performing Arts Center.
Yeah. Although who knows, in our new council, maybe that stuff like that could happen. You never know. So one thing I remember someone telling me, if you're going to get a job at like an art gallery doing that, you shouldn't do that if you're an artist, because you'll never keep up your practice. And you're pretty much exactly the opposite of that. You've stayed in sort of the administrative part of the arts, but I've always seen you creating art all the way through that and continue to.
Yeah, I've always had an active studio practice. The only thing that it's maybe been an impediment is the business side of it.
Yeah.
That I probably haven't marketed myself the way
for
I might have
work.
For my own work, the way I might have had I not spent all day doing it for
somebody else,
other artists, right?
Yeah.
Which I really love to do, but
yeah,
I'm really one-dimensional, like as a human being.
What do you mean one-dimensional?
It's all art. Like I've got, excuse me being so crass, but I got just like a boner for art. I make it, I think about it, I read about it, I work in the field.
Yeah.
When I go to a new city, I drag my wife to all the galleries until her feet get sore. I just, it's kind of a totalizing expression of my life.
And when do you think that happened?
I think probably when I started, just when I was young, at that kind of pivotal point.
Yeah.
And I just started
when
reading.
You were sort of in that basement space.
And I just realized how important it was culturally and historically and socially and personally, and just how it wraps its tendrils into every facet of our life and in all cultures throughout history.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And your work is still really tied to what you're reading and what you're thinking that way, right? Like it seems to me that you must still read a lot, and that's still affecting what you're doing.
Yeah, there's always kind of perennial threads that run through my work that, in fact, my mom gave me a bunch of old journals that I'd written in elementary school, and I still have the same themes and preoccupations. I really haven't grown up much beyond that. I've maybe increased the range of what I can read, but my interests are still kind of the same.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta love mums who save that stuff and give it to you when you're adults.
That was the big stack of things. It was great.
So one of the big things that I kind of noticed after university was all your Norse paintings. Am I saying it right?
Yep.
Norse, right? Can you maybe talk about those a little bit and what attracted you to that?
Yeah, I had spent a long time wondering what I was going to do kind of after art school, and I did small one-off projects and busied myself with the Potemkin Collective and other things. And I was really looking for some sort of symbol that or leitmotif that I could use for a series of works. And I tried things, discarded things, experimented, and I stumbled upon the myth of the Naglfar, which was a mythological ship from Norse mythology.
Yeah.
And it was believed that kind of in the underworld there was a ship being prepared from the fingernails and the toenails of the dead.
I read that. Yeah.
And when there was enough wickedness done in the world, there'd be enough material to set this ship asail and bring about Ragnarok, which is the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I liked it, but not as an illustration of mythology, but as an allegory for the individual.
Right.
And the things we do in the world and the things we leave in our wake and the meaning we try to scratch out with our little fingernails. And
is that when you were looking for fingernails?
Yeah.
Didn't I remember that? Some fingernails and toenails, or you bought? I don't know.
I had people sending... friends and relatives and well-wishers sending in toenails from all over. And I would add them.
Did you grind them down, or you just...
I would embed them.
Oh.
Because I would make my paintings with the real textural materials like dirts and resins and acrylic. And buried in a lot of those paintings, you can, if you touch them, you can feel pokey fingernails. I even sent out a global call for human fingernails, and I got some really
Really?
strange and troubled individuals contacting me. And actually really sad. There was one old fellow from Italy that had been collecting women's fingernails for most of his life.
Wow.
And
As like a fetish?
as a fetish.
Yeah.
And so he would pay women to grow them out, and the fetish, he would
Then
clip
clip them
them
off.
and save them.
Huh.
And talking to him, he had this really sad story about when he was a little boy, and he would hide pictures of women's hands from magazine catalogs under his bed, and the horror that his mother would find these and know that he was some sort of monstrous deviant.
Yeah.
And at the end, he was approaching the end of his life, and he had this collection, and he didn't want his children to have to find it or dispose of it, so he was going to sell it to me.
And so would he have given it to you, or he wanted to sell it to you?
Oh, it was too valuable. He wanted to sell it. I might have
All
bought
right.
it too, but a lot of them had nail polish on them, and I liked my fingernails just bare.
Oh, natural.
Yeah, au naturel.
Oh, I don't know. I think the polish, well, no, it does have a very fetish aspect to it. So speaking of these materials that you used to use to build up your paintings, what was the stability of your paintings, just from an interest?
Like in terms of their material stability?
Yeah,
and
I mean, if you're adding soil, I've just never done it before. So if you're adding soil and all these different things into your paint, do they?
they have a longevity. How long, I don't know, but they're still stable.
They look really stable.
It was almost like an alchemical laboratory in my studio. I had a quite elaborate process of gathering specific sorts of soils with high silica content, sifting them, emulsifying them in clear acrylic, and almost troweling them on.
Oh, okay. So
Coating
you're
them.
not just kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they're fairly stable in rust and metal and resins.
Yeah.
So obviously they're not gonna. I don't care if my work lasts a million years. I don't really care if it lasts tomorrow sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's not necessary.
they're stable for the people that bought them.
They'll be just fine. So your work goes from painting, writing. Your performance is a really big one, and one that have you finished up now? And is it? Sorry, I'll finish the sentence pretty soon, I swear. So you're very multidisciplinary. Maybe we can just go there. So
Sure.
When you're choosing something, are you choosing the subject matter first, or how you're gonna? Or do you say, I want to make a painting, and then you decide what you want to do? Or do you decide, I really want to talk about?
No, it goes from, I would say it from
Of course.
subject to predicate, where I think a lot of contemporary wants you to go from predicate to subject.
Right.
Come up with your idea, and then you generate the work.
Yeah.
And I've always found that a bit stifling for me personally, because there's that initial point of creativity and play that makes it so satisfying to do, and then you reflect on obviously the themes and your areas of research and how it might be relevant. So it's always just things that are resonant with me that I need to get down.
Yeah.
And I work really serially, so I work on bodies of work kind of with thematic subjects or motifs that I sometimes work on for years and years.
Right.
Like the ships I worked on for probably 5 or 6 years.
How did you know you were finished?
When I looked up and I was working on one, I just can't paint another one of these boats. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And then I threw it aside and
Yeah.
moved on to something else.
Well, I don't think you can count it throwing aside when you've done 5 years worth of work. That's pretty damn good, eh?
Yeah. And it runs almost in a cycle. You have this excitement of generating the work and then experimenting and seeing how many ways you can interpret the subject and the motifs, to this sense of kind of banality and boredom about what you're doing, to this sense of disgust that you've done so many and don't want to see another one again.
Well, maybe going to performance, you were a magician. Maybe you still are a magician. Maybe once you are your whole life, once you become a magician.
Yeah, once a magician, always a
Always
magician.
a magician. With a collective, did you call yourselves a collective or a troupe or a?
Yeah, we were a collective.
Yeah.
It was a medium, which stood for metaphysical explorations, divinations, and investigations utilizing magic. Yeah. But medium. The medium was the message.
Yeah. And you did magic is what your part in the mediums was, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we had there was originally was 3 of us, and then it moved on to 4, and we all had these sideshow like tents that we would set up in galleries and other spaces and offer psychic services essentially. And for me, I'm an absolute skeptic when it comes to that, even though I've read and researched a lot about it. And so I would
You still are?
I still am.
Yeah.
And I would reproduce a lot of the effects of a psychic using sleight of hand, trickery, illusion to create this kind of otherworldly experience.
Right.
Always knowing full well that what I was doing was
Sleight of
spurious
hand.
and carnivalesque.
Yeah.
And then we had charlatan.
Yeah.
Who kind of bridged the line. She was kind of a believer, but she used a bit of subterfuge to get her effects to work. And then we had Madame Simona, who legitimately kind of believed in that sort of phenomenon.
Yeah.
And then we had the professor, who was kind of built these apparatuses.
Who was the professor?
That was Rick Gillis.
Oh.
And he joined in kind of probably the last half of when we were doing medium.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he'd be a great addition to that.
But it was a lot of fun. We did some pretty prestigious ones. We did Nuit Blanche in Calgary in 2014.
Yeah.
Which there was like 15,000 people on. Is it Olympic Plaza downtown? Yeah.
Really?
Oh man, we had people lining up to come see our event. It was like, I was afraid there was going to be a riot, and my wife Alexis went and like got barricades and was kind of guiding people through. Yeah, it was just,
That's so her.
Yeah. It was pretty great.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because we could only do one person
Right.
or 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And you come into this closed tent that's decorated with all sorts of...
So people can't even see what you're doing that are lining up.
Not really. Mine used a lot of flashes of fire so people could see something happening in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did the Works Festival and did some stuff at E-Media and Mountain Standard Time. And
Guys got around.
yeah, so we did performance, and then we were also object makers. We would do collaborative drawings and make sculptures.
As medium.
As medium.
Oh.
All on that kind of theme of exploring those kind of liminal states of belief.
Right. And you mentioned just quickly the Potemkin, and maybe we can just talk about that too, because that was a pretty amazing collective that went through a few different artists even, didn't it? Like groups of artists.
Yeah, originally it was founded by Robin Moody, and it was a student gallery that was housed at in the Oliver Building.
Right.
Because I remember exhibiting in there, or not exhibiting, but going and seeing exhibits when I was a student.
Yeah, me too.
And so when I got a studio after art school, and it had become dormant at that point, and Robert Bechtel, who was part of the original, we started talking about having some more shows, and it just kind of grew into, I guess, the Potemkin Collective or Potemkin 2.0, and we started actually occupying spaces that were outside of the Oliver Building and having these large thematic community exhibitions that would invite lots of participants and participation. It was great.
Yeah.
It was really satisfying.
And there still is the one where there's still Potemkin TOO on 6th Street there.
I just walked by and they changed the sign, so
did they change it now?
Yeah.
Because it was like that for years and years, still had the sign up as the 200. But talk about, I guess we were talking in your about assemblages, like in your paintings where you put everything on. Do you do that in other forms too, like your printmaking? Are you mostly using wood block? Like, are assemblages important to you? Or just whatever works?
I would say the latter, whatever works, which
Yeah.
oftentimes becomes assemblage.
Yeah.
And I start aggregating my surfaces with gluing pieces of clay or whatever to paper, or
Yeah.
just allow it to form quite naturally and organically. So
Well, and I seem to remember text on quite a few of your different
quite a bit of text, yes.
works. Yeah. Yeah.
The ones I've been kind of laboring over for the last couple years are fairly traditional two-dimensional charcoal drawings.
Right. I noticed you were starting that.
Kind of anatomical, or based on anatomical drawings.
Are they you?
Yeah, because they're not anatomical. They're anatomies of the philosophical body.
Oh.
So, ideas and epistemologies and those sorts of
they
things.
are.
Yeah.
And so, is it No One or Noon?
Mr. No One.
Mr. No One. That's what I thought. But I thought I better double check. Is a film that's completed.
Night
It looks
Walking,
like, right?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah.
Has it been released yet?
It hasn't.
Of course, with everything happening, right?
It was a collaborative exercise between myself and 3 other really talented artists, a sound artist and 2 filmmakers.
Oh.
Brad Gorick, J.P. Marchant, Clayton Smith, and myself.
Okay. Yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, super.
So I kind of I wrote the script and the general story outline.
And you're the star.
Starred in it, and they did the lighting, the cinematography, the editing, and then Clayton did the sound. Yeah, I was really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, so great. Yeah, because it's very professional, it's very compelling, and when you see professional lighting and videographers, boy, you really appreciate it, don't you?
Oh yeah,
because you can really tell yours doesn't. Yeah.
And coming from like a visual arts background, so much video art is poorly produced, right?
Yes, totally.
It doesn't.
I've done tons of poorly
produced. Same here. You don't need to. You just need to whip out a little camera and do it, right? But when you're working with people whose craft is in film, that takes it in a whole other direction, which is really satisfying, but also really frustrating because the spontaneity and the immediacy that you get as a visual artist doing that, you don't get. Like it can take 3 hours to set up all your things and get 15 seconds of footage. It's just so labor intensive.
Yeah, it looks good though. I hope it gets released soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are they still doing film festivals?
They are, so we're getting it out to a few of those.
Yeah. Now, that started, did it start off, Mr. No One walks through the streets, right?
Right.
Sort of taking in the streets. You started doing that, didn't you, before you wrote your script? Wasn't that just a practice you had, or?
Definitely that kind of idea of the flaneur. Alexis, my wife, had gone up to work up north for a year. Yeah. And I was kind of in this indeterminate fugue state. And when all the hysteria and histrionics and hyperbole around the supervised consumption site started, by people that never come downtown, and on both sides of the debate, pro and con, making these proclamations and pontificating about it's not safe, it is safe, and especially the people that were like, it's not safe downtown. I'm like, I don't believe that. So it started as primarily an exercise to prove those people wrong. Yeah. So I started nightly hour-and-a-half long walks that would take me through Galt Gardens, past the consumption site, and in all these areas that people say are dangerous or unsafe. Yeah. And it morphed into just this kind of being a social ecologist and times of introspection and reflection, and that's something that I still do. I went out last night.
You do, hey?
Yeah.
And what did you find? Did you find that did you feel like it was dangerous? Did you notice a shift? Did you?
I'd say if there's one overwhelming emotion that I experienced, was probably sadness.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I've never ran into any situation where I felt unsafe. Arguably, I'm a tall man, but I don't think that's it. These people downtown are the vulnerable population, are in the throes of an addiction. They don't want to be there. They don't want to be villains.
Yeah.
I've also had some great interactions and some surreal interactions. And I used to journal it quite heavily and post them on social media. Though someone once accused me of maybe romanticizing the experience of those people on the streets, and I was like, fair criticism. So I no longer publicly put that stuff up. But the film itself kind of, even though it deviates from that, it has some of those themes definitely of what like a white settler observer might see or think about as he experiences that. Though it's more of a kind of existential horror movie, I think.
It actually, that's a really good description, because it has, watching it, it has such a night, it has, you're kind of just waiting for the horror to happen.
Right.
Yeah. But, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
Watch for the film.
Yeah, watch for the film. And it's called?
Night Walking.
Night Walking. So there you go. We'll make sure we, well, I don't know, is the link to the film yet? Is that something you're showing people, or it's when it'll be released?
Yeah, because there's some festivals that want to have rights of first screening, so we can't kind of publicly put it out there until we've kind of exhausted looking for festival venues to screen it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you.
Well, I wonder if now we should take a break and then we'll talk about CASA.
Sure.
If that's cool with you.
You betcha.